The Shoot the Breeze topic number 3 tonight. It says the truth of Juneteenth. This is going to take us to Instagram, I believe. Yes, it is. Make sure you guys can see my screen. It looks like it's coming up. It's just slow. Yeah, there it is. Lawrence Song says Flint was black. No, he said Flint was back in the Bush era. Was it that far back? Wow.
Yeah, remember the time Obama got on there and drank some water and pretended the water was all good? Terrible.
Oh, yeah. Obama was a part of that, too. That's right. Wow, that's crazy. It's crazy. And we need Donald Trump to wake us up. Should have read topic number 3, the truth of Juneteenth. We'll watch it. It's a short. We'll watch it and then we'll discuss.
Juneteenth. Because I don't think that delayed freedom is something to celebrate. So justice delayed is justice denied. I don't think we as African people have enough reverence for what our ancestors endured. So to have a fucking picnic and parties and concerts and vendors in recognition or slavery's emancipation, and it's not even for emancipation, because Emancipation Day is not Juneteenth. Juneteenth is the day when Africans who spent an extra couple of years in chattel were finally let go. To me, that's a tragedy. After that initial Juneteenth celebration, that should have been the end of celebrating slavery. But when they went to burial grounds, they used to use Africans as fertilizer. They would strip mine our body parts. George Washington, they're coming out with a new propaganda film about young George Washington. He would extract the teeth from living slaves and embed them in his mouth. They had Africans, skeletons that they dug up and find that tendons were ripped from bones. Ligaments and tendons were ripped from bones, literally worked them to death. And not just, and they would age these corpses, these remains, 9, 10-year-olds. I think Africans should recognize Juneteenth by rising up, by recommitting to resistance. It should be a day of mourning, of reflection, of reaching out to our ancestors. A day that we sit to say, hey, we still under a Juneteenth because we still ain't fucking free. We celebrating Africans who didn't know they were free. And the only thing worse than an African who's enslaved and don't know they free is an African who believes they free while they still enslaved. I don't like Juneteenth because I don't think that delayed freedom is something to celebrate or justice denied. I don't think we as African people have enough reverence for what our ancestors endured. So to have a fucking picnic and parties and concerts and vendors in recognition or slavery's emancipation, and it's not even for emancipation, because Emancipation Day is not Juneteenth. Juneteenth is the day when Africans who spent an extra couple of years in chattel were finally let go. To me, that's a tragedy. After that initial Juneteenth celebration, that should have been the end of celebrating slavery. But when they went to burial grounds, they used to use Africans as fertilizer. They would strip mine our body parts. George Washington, they're coming out with a new propaganda film about young George Washington. He would extract the teeth from living slaves and embed them in his mouth. They had Africans, skeletons that they dug up and find that tendons were ripped from bones. Ligaments and tendons were ripped from bones, literally worked them to death. And not just, and they would age these corpses, these remains, 9, 10-year-olds. I think Africans should recognize Juneteenth by rising up, by recommitting to resistance. It should be a day of mourning, of reflection, of reaching out to our ancestors. A day that we sit to say, hey, we still under a Juneteenth because we still ain't fucking free. We celebrating Africans who didn't know they were free. And the only thing worse than an African who's enslaved and don't know they free is an African who believes they free while they still enslaved.
Woo! Don't stop seasoning your food and grilling and all that. Happy Juneteenth to you still. But the brother makes a couple of points here, and some of you in the chat seem to agree. Let me just read some comments from the video. Someone here says, I'm sorry you feel that way because my Black Texan ancestors were celebrating no longer being enslaved and reuniting with their families across Texas that they were separated from. Truth be told, I wish it would have stayed a Texas celebration locally and statewide. It was specific to areas in Texas, even though, yes, across the nation, many still were not free. But hey, everything gets hijacked. I just lost my place. But hey, everything gets hijacked, and people complain about the hijacked holiday. Someone else says, I don't like how Juneteenth was commodified and then used as a political tool. Juneteenth was nationalized without proper education, and that's exactly what capitalism does. You're given just enough to buy in, pun intended. Third person says, our ancestors danced, celebrated, and sang their way through slavery as a testament that their spirit could not and would not be broken. Them spiritual hymns, tambourines, and drums kept them connected to the ancestors in the spiritual realms, something you don't believe in, so how are you talking about ancestors? We must continue singing, dancing, praying, along with all the things that got us through 407 years of bondage here in America. Battles are fought on many levels. Your platform is necessary, just as the others. Highlighting what you perceive is wrong with other platforms while arrogantly defending yours is the blueprint of what our oppressors use to diminish or cancel out others. Let's concentrate on getting there, which is free, and not show how we got there. Peace. FYI, there are things beyond your level of understanding and comprehension, most in part because of your ego. Your belief that there is no higher source will ensure you stay right where you are, projecting intellectual masturbation like your oppressor. He knows there is a higher source, and his biggest asset or weapon was convincing Black people it doesn't exist, I guess. His entire purpose is to become what you don't think exists. I'm surprised. I'm sure if I scroll down a little bit more, there'll be people questioning his background and if he's a tether and all this type of shit. But in the chat, Lord of Slaughter agreed with the video. Trigger Happy said it should be considered like unfinished business or something like a stage and how to get to the next stage. Lord Slaughter says we still ain't free. He says, see, people just proud to say they survived. It's lunacy. He says those comments are why I no longer try saving anybody. I feel you, Lord of Slaughter. I feel you. It feels like I said before and I said earlier tonight, it's too much buy-in required, I find, with our people. And so it just feels like a wasted effort to keep trying to show our folks something. Now, me personally, I don't have a problem with folks celebrating Juneteenth. What I wish we would do, in fact, this is a thought someone gave me when I was a kid, when I was a teenager back in Nassau, about Emancipation Day. Emancipation Day is that first Monday in August. And a guy said one time, he said, that should be our Christmas day, so to speak. That should be a day when we are gifting each other books, like important books like Garvey's philosophies and opinions and stuff. And that stuck with me. That he told me that over 30 years ago. That stuck with me to this day. That should be what we do on that Emancipation Day. We should be freeing ourselves, giving ourselves books from the intellects that we still admire, and we should be doing something to kind of create the mindset, not just within ourselves, but within the generations that follow behind us. I would say something similar about Juneteenth. Now, it wasn't my direct ancestors in Texas, so I try to not say too much, but I don't think celebrating is a bad thing. I just wish we would structure it in a way that not only feeds us literally and figuratively today, but feeds us going on into the future. Black Steel, the truth about Juneteenth. What say you to that?
Well, he's not totally wrong. I like the part he mentioned about how we don't have reverence or respect for our ancestors. That is very true. That's very true. I feel like many times we take slavery. We don't really understand how horrible it was, right? And I think that's very true. And I think that there's almost like a nonchalant attitude we have about our ancestors and what they went through. And I see it with the young people, and they think everything is a joke, and they crack jokes about things, and they don't really have the reverence that I see that other oppressed people who've been oppressed in their history, seem to have about their history and what their ancestors have experienced. So I do agree with that. Diallo is called the Grinch of Pan-Africa. He's generally a very pessimistic person. When you could probably tell how people react to in the comments. I as well don't have a problem with people celebrating, because the truth of the matter is that Black people in Texas knew about the Emancipation Proclamation. They knew that it was there. There were, the slaves had many networks to get information to each other across distances. So I do believe the slaves were well aware of the proclamation, but it's just the fact that because Texas was never under the control of the Union Army, during the Civil War, many times as the Union Army would progress deeper into Confederate territory, they would go into Texas. They would call it driving the Negroes. They're going to drive the Negroes into Texas to kind of prevent them from being freed, because what happened is that as the Union Army took more territory, they would free the slaves. When Sherman did his march through Georgia, everywhere Sherman went, he would let he would free the slaves. So in order to avoid them doing that, they would drive the Negroes further west into Texas. So they were aware that slavery of the Emancipation Proclamation, but it's just they were not in a position to really, do anything about it. They didn't have a army, or they had to wait till the Union Army touched down in Galveston, Texas on June 19, 1865 to notify them. But not getting too far of a history, the Emancipation Proclamation really didn't free too many slaves. It wasn't until the passage of the 13th Amendment in December of 65 that slavery actually ended in the United States. But many places kept up slavery up until then. For example, there were 4 states that did secede from the Union after the Civil War: Delaware, Maryland, I believe it was Missouri, and I forgot the other one, the border states. But they never seceded from the United States, and they were slave states. So slavery didn't end as a result of the Emancipation Proclamation, simply because that those states were not in rebellion. The Emancipation only affected those states that were in rebellion against the United States and that were slave owners. It was meant to be it was executive order. We always talk about executive orders signed by Trump. But long story short, I'm not against celebrating, but I also understand his idea that, we have to couple this barbecue and the grilling with reverence and just basically an understanding of what our ancestors experienced and what they went through. And also, it should not be so, like you were saying, these people were denied their freedom 2 extra years than they should have been. They should have never been enslaved in the first place. But I understand what he's saying. These people should have been free. Why are we celebrating this? But I also understand that human beings, they want a reason to celebrate. They want a reason to organize and be with family. I don't necessarily see that's a problem. But I do think that we do have to have a little bit more memorials and understanding. It's not about just another extra day to grill. You should don't forget what those people experienced and what they went through as well. But no, I kind of get what he's saying. But again, he's the Grinch of Pan-Africanism. He's tends to be more negative than positive.
Yes, I'm not familiar with this guy. So, actually, before I go back to Brother Bakari, is this a guy? So he's Pan-African, but he's the Grinch of Pan-Africanism. Should he be listened to on a regular?
Well, let me say this. I have been listening to him for some years, right? And I do agree with a lot of what he says. But he is arrogant. He's very egotistical. He doesn't like to admit when he's wrong. And I find that sometimes he lives in an echo chamber. He is atheist. He doesn't believe in any type of religious belief. But he always said, if you're going to believe in a God, believe in an African God. So, okay, fine. But I'm the type of person, spit the meat, eat the meat, spit out the bones. So I listen to what he says. And if I agree with it, I agree with it. If not, then I move on. But I do think his takes are correct more often than not. But I do think that when I call him the Grinch of Pan-Africanism, that was, how Umar was called the Prince of Pan-Africanism. So this is just kind of a play on words about, Umar called himself the Prince, and then, Diallo called himself the Grinch. And he didn't give himself that name, but, he can be somewhat pessimistic on his outlook. And that's why they call him the Grinch. But I do think many of his takes are accurate. Some stuff, not so much. He's not always in a position to reevaluate himself. But I listened to him for a long time now. I think much of what he says is accurate, but again, he's only human, right? And I think that's part of the thing. Sometimes we can be so dogmatic in our positions that we don't always evaluate what we believe. But I agree on a part of what he says, but I'm still I got my chicken out there right now. So
yeah, man. Don't stop doing what y'all doing, man. This is his opinion. I put it in the chat. Are you guys familiar with the gentleman Diallo? I'm not. So I'll be curious to hear what you guys in the chat have to say as well. We ain't gotta tear him down necessarily, but just give your honest opinion on what you think of him if you're familiar with him. Trigger Happy is putting some thoughts in there. I'll read those in a second. I want to get to something Trigger said earlier. Lot of Slaughter says the young generation makes jokes and twerk at the slave force in Africa. Yeah, we talked about that on Shoot the Breeze some time back. And that's not good to me. To me, that's not good either.
Off topic, but so I had at one time, during the school year, the kids have a Halloween costume dress up. And there's one black boy, he said, I was thinking about coming dressed up as a slave. And I said, have you lost your mind? Could you imagine a Jewish boy coming here dressed up as a Holocaust survivor with a number tattoo on his arm? He would never do that. And you should never disrespect your ancestors. And he was shocked that I said that to him. But I want him to understand that the suffering of your ancestors is no laughing matter. And no other people regard the suffering of their ancestors as a laughing matter either. So I wanted to get that across. That young man, me and him are still cool. He graduates next year. But, he didn't understand. And I guess I shame on his parents for not teaching him.
Good job on your part there too. As an educator and as an elder to that kid, I appreciate what you did there. We let a lot of stuff slide. I'm not going to get too far into it, but we let a lot of stuff slide and kind of make light of these things. You know, I've gotten into this bad habit recently of like doom scrolling, and I see a lot of like humor on like Instagram and stuff, and sometimes it's humor at our ancestors. You know, it's like, why would you make that joke? You know, but in the chat, Trigger Happy says some want our media to not reflect social realism when we aren't in a condition of peace. So holidays, in a sense, can't completely reflect a sense of peace because we aren't free. Lot of Slaughter says 100 to what Trigger said. Trigger goes on and say the same discussion Diallo talked about is the same one continental Africans have every Independence Day. Quote, why celebrate Ghana Independence Day when our government is trash? Basically, this is Trigger again. Basically, another way of saying, why celebrate this day when our countries are not free but still subjugated? It's an independence in name only for many perspectives. Lastly, Trigger says some will rebuttal and say we accomplished a stage, though, and that should be celebrated, and we need to struggle for another stage. Lord of Slaughter says all that white paperwork and documents means nothing at the end of the day. The Europeans didn't have the authority to take or give me my human rights. I appreciate that too, Lord of Slaughter. I'm going to give you that as well. I like that. Trigger says he had this issue of when black male study scholars called him out for not reading The Man Not. They're talking about Diallo. Trigger, now this is Trigger's take on Diallo. He says, I like Diallo, but I always disagree with his atheism, as atheism is not African and will never be African. I appreciate that. Provide Triggers for Evolution has joined us tonight. Thank you. Sister, happy Juneteenth to you as well. Provide Triggers for Evolution says, yes, I listen to Diallo often. He makes some good points very often. His delivery may be too raw for some as he shares some uncomfortable truths. And she said that with an exclamation point. So she particularly likes Diallo. I appreciate that feedback from you guys who are familiar with Diallo. With that said, let's welcome back Brother Bakari. Brother Bakari, did you get a chance to see this video?
No, I didn't see it.
Okay.
But I'm sorry.
Let me play it again so you can speak on it for what you see. Okay?
All right.
I don't like Juneteenth because I don't think that delayed freedom is something to celebrate. So justice delayed is justice denied. I don't think we as African people have enough reverence for what our ancestors endured. So to have a fucking picnic and parties and concerts and vendors in recognition for slavery's emancipation, and it's not even for emancipation, because Emancipation Day is not Juneteenth. Juneteenth is the day when Africans who spent an extra couple of years in chattel were finally let go. To me, that's a tragedy. After that initial Juneteenth celebration, that should have been the end of celebrating slavery. But when they went to burial grounds, they used to use Africans as fertilizer. They would strip mine our body parts. George Washington, they're coming out with a new propaganda film about young George Washington. He would extract the teeth from living slaves and embed them in his mouth. They had Africans, skeletons that they dug up and find that tendons were ripped from bones. Ligaments and tendons were ripped from bones, literally worked them to death. And not just, and they would age these corpses, these remains, 9, 10-year-olds. I think Africans should recognize Juneteenth by rising up, by recommitting to resistance. It should be a day of mourning, of reflection, of reaching out to our ancestors. A day that we sit to say, hey, we still under a Juneteenth because we still ain't fucking free. We celebrating Africans who didn't know they were free. And the only thing worse than an African who's enslaved and don't know they free is an African who believes they free while they still enslaved.
I promise I'm going to check him out a little bit more and see what's what for myself. But Brother Bakari, the truth about Juneteenth, what say you to all of it?
First, I'm gonna say most people I heard who had a problem with celebrating Juneteenth, they were upset because they say Joe Biden gave us a holiday. That's all they do is give us tokens, right? Now this brother said he don't want Juneteenth because Africans was kept 2 years extra, right? And that is a bad thing. But I can say this, and I would need my brother Oren on here to break down more of this history. But you know they didn't sit and wait. I guess that you can say they sat and wait, but they didn't have weapons or anything to fight back against those white folk, right? We act like we were going to become magic and defeat the bullet. But I do understand rebelling. But also, like I said, I need my brother Oren to explain this a little more. I don't know what it is. But you do know there was some black people that was in the Union Army that militiaed up and went out their way and started fighting to free people that wasn't that hadn't been free. Texas wasn't the only one. Texas just had it longer, and they made it their last. But it's like Texas celebrated, and most people, especially I'm 54, especially most people from my generation, that say they hadn't seen it. They had seen it. They seen it in the movie Jason Lyrics. Jason Lyrics. They had a Juneteenth festival in Jason Lyrics. That is something black people did on their own, and I don't see anything wrong with celebrating it. You know, they celebrated in Oklahoma. They celebrated in part of Louisiana, and they celebrated it in parts of Mississippi. Not where I'm from. I never heard of it. I didn't know where it was till I went to Texas. Then I watched Jason Lyrics. I said, oh, this is what they're doing on Jason Lyrics. I didn't hear of it till I went to Texas. But I don't see a problem with celebrating it. Actually celebrating it, and you're getting together having a barbecue, and you say you want to organize, that could actually be a good time to organize. See, sometimes we got to look at what good can come from what we're doing instead of always talking about how bad it is, right? Look at what we were already doing when people was, because I've heard a lot of people, I ain't celebrating that. Some Democrat gonna give us a federal holiday. Well, don't do it. But black people were celebrating Juneteenth way before some Democrat decided to make it a federal. All they do is give us tokens. But black people's already celebrating it way before it was ever made a federal, holiday. So we got to see the positive. The positive in that is we were already doing it before Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, Jim Crow Joe, before he ever said anything and made it a federal holiday. Into saying we should be want to resist. I agree. So how about instead of complaining about celebrating the holiday, how about be a part of the community when they're celebrating and talk to people and see how many people want to resist. This might make people want to resist. Some people don't know the real history of Juneteenth. So maybe if you tell them the history of Juneteenth, right? Maybe if we go out and we deal with the people and tell them the history of Juneteenth, maybe we can create some type of organization that want to resist and that want to fight back. So I don't have a problem with celebrating Juneteenth at all. That I get a mic.
Bakari, I feel you on that. Bakari, Black Sea let us step away for a minute, but let's me and you dialogue for a second. If you, because you put a bit of a bug in my mind that Juneteenth would be a good day to organize around the celebration. Bakari, if you had the resources in your neck of the woods, what would you do on Juneteenth?
Oh, I would have something for the community. Ask everybody to come out, but at the same time, I'm organizing. I'm organizing with the ones that see. We can't force people to want to organize and want to resist. But it's some that's going to come that want to resist. But they can come and get them a hot dog and a hamburger. The ones that don't want to, they might sit there and listen, and you can put a thought in their head. And I'm gonna use me. I just left for my my son. You know, he came here, so we giving him something here for his graduation for the people that did make it. Graduation, birthday in Juneteenth. It was him, his two Haitian buddies, his Nigerian buddy, his other brothers. I call them the Nerd Crew. Had made it, and they got one guy with them from Nicaragua. When we talked about Juneteenth, that's what they talked about was the fireworks. My son knew because I told him. So, but when I started talking to them about Juneteenth and the history of Juneteenth and what it meant, so now the gathering became something different. It's not just to get together and eat and joke and smile now. So now they want to discuss ideas. See, we can't blame people for not knowing. You understand what I'm saying? If our people, we can't blame them for not knowing. If we know, we're supposed to teach them. Like Lord of Slaughter put in the chat that we could use it, but he was right. He said people just gather with immediate family and not the community. For the most, you're correct. But you have places where the community is, where the town or the city in is doing Juneteenth events. So I'm saying what it could be used for. So can I ask you a question, Coco? Do you think if you had a Juneteenth gathering, you threw it, you invited your block, right? Do you think you could use it to possibly organize and put a bug in people ear and make them think and see something different?
Absolutely. In fact, this conversation has me thinking about, next year, Juneteenth, unless next year is a leap year, Juneteenth should be on a Saturday. We do Shoot the Breeze every Saturday night. What would it be like to organize an event with like-minded people, and we do a show, we do Shoot the Breeze, and we have the community speaking on their experiences and their thoughts, and quietly organize on the side as well, not on YouTube, but it's definitely giving me an idea. It's definitely giving me an idea.
So how about this, Coco? We come on here, we talk all the time. This is something we do. How about one day we just decide we want to meet, which I've been trying to get us more than me to say we need to do this, right? But let's say we want to meet, and you talking about doing your live show from an event. You know how great that would be? And now we get to talk, we get to hear exactly how these people feel and and what they're doing and what does Juneteenth mean to them. And then at the same time, we can put bugs in the air. What Malcolm said, you give them a little bit at a time, because if you give them too much at once, they're gonna get scared. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, that has my mind running now on how that's a thought. That's definitely a thought. And that's definitely a thought. So I appreciate this conversation.
You have to start putting money now. Organize, start putting the money now.
Yeah.
So we can do it.
You know what? We're gonna talk about that as a group more by next week and the next several months leading up to Juneteenth of next year. That's what we will do. I think that's a great idea. And again, this is what Shoot the Breeze is really for. it's not just to hear people talk. And if you notice, we don't really argue up here. We state our thoughts and we fall off with one another. But it's supposed to spark something. Because here's the next level of it. If we're already celebrating Juneteenth, and I'm looking to do this, how great would it be if, uh, you know, I don't want to attach things to people, but how great would it be if Bakari is doing something similar in his neck of the woods, and we join those things in this online community, or we show up in person, et cetera, et cetera. But we could do several things, several places, and hear from different people what Juneteenth means to them and what they'd like to see done in the community. You know, it could be a good thing. It could be a good thing.
Can I tell you something else? I'm gonna say something else, and people might not. I'm gonna tell you another one you can use, because we can get mad at our people all we want, but people gonna enjoy the 4th of July. They gonna enjoy their work. They gonna barbecue. They gonna do all that, right? I don't do it. That's not my thing. But watch this. But since our people doing it, that's another day you could organize, because our people gonna be together. You understand what I'm saying? Because our people is gonna be together.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, food for thought. Food for thought going forward. I think that's a nice. I think that's a nice idea. Food for thought. I'm gonna keep that in my mind. Because it's Juneteenth. I know. I feel like in the states, you guys don't do Emancipation Day as big as in the Caribbean, but that Juneteenth is that's an idea. That's an idea for sure. Uh, I guess Black Steel didn't come back yet. So what we'll do? Let me stop sharing my screen for a second. But Bakari, what do you say to somebody who says, like Trigger brought up earlier, we are in a bad state of affairs worldwide. We shouldn't be doing all this partying and celebrate. I heard what you said already, and I spoke to that. But what would you say to that person who says, you know what? Let's get rid of all of this celebrating. Juneteenth should have been celebrated that first year and never again. What say you in general?
I wouldn't say he's wrong about us not having time to party and do all that, but I'll go back to my original point. Our people gonna do it regardless of how we feel. So let's use that for an opportunity to reach our people. Let's use that for an opportunity to reach our youth, right? And let's use that for an opportunity to organize and gain traction with people who want to be part of what we named our little group, what we trying to do, our militia, what we doing, what we working on. Let's see if we want anybody to want to be part of the Black Wolf Brigade. See, even though we don't agree with it, we can use it, right? Like I go back to Christianity in the church. I'm not a Christian. And when I said what I said about Christians, I know more Christians, because I do know a lot of Christians that's ready and will talk the same stuff we talk for the most part, except they're going to mention Jesus and all that, right? But since I know they're at the gun range and I know they're training, ain't that a good idea to try? And that's a good time to try to reach them?
Yeah, for sure.
It's a great time. So instead of me telling them, forget Jesus and forget your church and forget your religion, we have something in common right here. They like to train. What they're training for. They might not be training 100% what I'm training for. They might not feel exactly how I feel, but they're feeling something. So that's why they're training. So now we have an opportunity to talk to them, and we have an opportunity so we can connect. You know, we ain't got. Sometimes we don't. We need to understand. We don't have to agree with what our people is doing, right? For us to be able to use it to our benefit, and at the same time, teach our people, teach them something different, show them something different, and we'll never know what we'll have on our side. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A lot of stuff said the same thing I said at the same time. Exactly. Yeah. I feel you on that.
But what you say,
Um,
Trigger
I
Happy
just want,
said. I'm gonna say this. You say Trigger Happy said. Trigger Happy ain't wrong with what he said. I just see how we can use it though.
I just want to shout out. So Dorico Cooper Photography is here. He says, shout out to the Marine Corps Major James Capers Jr., Medal of Honor recipient 60 years after the fact. Dorico Cooper Photography. I emailed you, must be a year ago. I was like, yo, I haven't heard from you in a minute. Where you been? And I haven't heard from you. I'm glad to see you're here, you're alive and hopefully well, and you're here in the chat tonight, man. Dorico, when I first started Shoot the Breeze, Dorico was like a regular in the chat, right? And I used to get a lot of a lot of stuff from Dorico about like investing and cryptocurrency, and I haven't heard from you, man. So I'm glad to see you there, and I hope you're well, man. Shout out to Jose. Jose says, "What's up, fam?" Jose, we right here chilling. It's Juneteenth. Happy Juneteenth to you too. We just here having a little conversation. Black Steel has stepped away. Black Steel is back. I don't know if you heard what we were talking about while you stepped away. And if you had any thoughts, or if not, I could just go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 4. But I think that's a good idea. That's something to think about for next Juneteenth. Definitely. Black Steel, did you want to add anything?
No, we can go ahead and go to the next topic.
All right, cool. All right, man. Good conversation there, Brother Bakari. I appreciate you. A lot of slaughter. Appreciate you too, with all your feedback, and Trigger Happy, of course, and everyone else in between. I'll check out this brother, Diallo, when I get a chance. Kofi the Black Critic said he subscribed to him. He has good content, so I'll definitely check him out. Dorico says, thanks, brother, doing well. Been through a lot since we last spoke. Okay, hopefully we could chop it up and email again at some point soon. In the meantime, let's go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 4 for time's sake. We're going to end at around 11. Shoot the Breeze topic